isolation, clarity, disbelief.
You are listening to The Brave Files, real stories from people living courageously. You can listen to the show anywhere you enjoy podcasts, and we'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give a review on Apple Podcasts. It really does make a difference, and we appreciate it. Now here's your host, Heather Vickery.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Brave Files podcast. This is Heather Vickery. I am so grateful that you are here with us today. Today, we are celebrating Transgender Awareness Day, and our guest, Denise Bowker, grew up in a small town halfway between New York City and Philadelphia. They always knew something was not quite right, but couldn't put their finger on it. After hiding who they truly were for almost 5 decades, that's a long time, Denise has sprung forth with clarity, determination, and a brand new outlook on life. Today, Denise lives in Chicago and is active in the transgender community to hold other people's hands who are considering or who are transitioning. She's here to talk with us today about what it's like to grow up with gender dysphoria and probably a lot of other things that we can come up with. Denise, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here.
I'm excited. So, interest of full disclosure, Denise and I are friends. And when I was looking at the schedule for this coming year and realized Transgender Awareness Day was coming, I reached out and said, I love you and I would love to have you on the show. And what'd you say, Denise?
I said something about, I'm honored and I've always wanted to be on, but was too afraid to ask.
Too afraid to ask. See, we're brave every day, aren't we? So before we get too far into this, can you please share the definition of gender dysphoria for our listeners who may not know what that is?
Sure. Gender dysphoria actually is defined in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders in the 5th edition. That's a mouthful.
That's not changed. It's still a mental disorder?
It's defined in this manual, but it is not a mental disorder. It's kind of weird.
Okay.
There are a lot of things in there that are not mental disorders. There are a lot of, I don't want to get into all the details.
Okay.
There's just a lot of stuff about it. So anyway, gender dysphoria is a prolonged discomfort with someone's assigned gender. And it goes on in their definitions of what prolonged means and what discomfort means and assigned gender, what that means. But basically, people who felt that when you're born, you're assigned a gender. And as you grow up, it just doesn't make sense that that was assigned to you, regardless of what your genitalia might be.
Okay. So thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Sure.
What is your first memory of experiencing gender dysphoria? When did you know this wasn't right for you?
Okay, so I was unaware of what the physical body differences were between boys and girls when I actually first asked my mother, hey, was a mistake made? Am I supposed to be a girl? And that was about the age of 4.
Wow.
So I clearly remember my mother was emptying the dishwasher and I said, hey, Mom, it was a mistake made, was I supposed to be a girl? And that was, 50 something plus years ago.
What did your mom say? I don't know. Do you actually remember that, or has your mom since retold that story?
Oh, no. I remember this as though it happened. I have never heard her retell it, although she has retold it, but just not to me.
Not to you.
Yeah, that comes later in the story. But her reaction to me, I don't remember the exact words other than maybe a chuckle, was, the bottom line was, no, a mistake wasn't made, go out and play.
Mm.
Now, remember, this was in the 60s.
Sure, very dismissive.
So,
typical parenting in the 60s. Mommy needs a drink, go out and play.
Yeah, you could go outside. It was more, she asked questions. I do remember that. She's like, so why do you think that? And at the age of 4, I didn't have the words to describe what I was feeling. So it was, just some just superficial things like, I have a brother and a sister, okay? And my brother has dark hair, my dad has dark hair. I had light hair, my sister had light hair, my mom had light hair.
Right.
And so, at that age, I don't know, but I just knew that I didn't want to follow that track. I wanted to follow the female track. And
That's
I just wanted to make sure that a mistake wasn't made and that, I'm supposed to, go down the dark side, shall
it's
we say.
interesting. Oh my gosh, now I can't remember the name of it. Bernadette and my partner and I saw a play a couple of years ago. It was a mermaid something. My goodness. You guys, I'm going to figure out what it is and we're going to put it in the show notes because she'll remember. And I have terrible memory for that stuff. But it was about a young transgender child, transgender girl. And she asked her parents at one point, when is my penis going to fall off and I'm going to get a vagina? And our parents were like, that's not really how it works. And she was like, but I've been waiting for that to happen. What do you mean that's not how it works? So that's interesting. You know what else I find interesting is from a parenting standpoint, it doesn't surprise me that at 4 in the 60s, you hadn't had a conversation about genitalia. But my kids, all of them, the oldest being 14, the youngest being 5, have known from a very young age what their body parts are and that different people have different body parts. And they're actually pretty good now because we know enough transgender people that they'll say most girls have a vagina or most boys have a penis. It's pretty impressive actually.
I am impressed. I can tell you, I actually remember the incident that occurred when I realized that there are different genitalia for boys and girls. And that was, my mom and my sister were in the front of the car, and I was sitting in the back, and we were going to the doctor's office for some reason. And my sister was complaining about peeing into a cup and what a pain in the neck it is. And it goes all over the place, and it's such a mess. And you're laughing, but
It's
wait.
true.
And I'm sitting in the back thinking, are you an idiot? How hard could it be?
Oh, that's
And
funny.
and then they started to explain it to me that no, boys and girls are different down there. And that was the whole conversation. And I was old enough that I should have known better.
How
I
old
was,
at that point?
I'm going to say late elementary,
Oh,
third,
wow.
fourth grade, maybe
Wow.
it wasn't fifth grade. It would have been third or fourth grade. But I was old enough that I should have known by that point. And,
Wow.
so,
Okay.
even, for all those years, I'm still thinking something's wrong here. Something's wrong here. And I had no idea, you know, whatever.
And
So,
so you moved through your life, you grew into adulthood, you
right.
got married
Yes.
to a woman,
Yes.
had a family.
Yes.
Yes. So all this time, as all of this is happening, are you still thinking, yes, but something's not right? How are you feeling throughout all of that part of your life?
Okay. So when people think of, let's go with transgender women for a minute. So, nor people who are not in the trans community and don't know anybody that is transgender, they immediately jump to, oh, well, that trans woman was uncomfortable or trapped inside of a man's body. And the idea of just being trapped in the wrong body, or those are the words that people use.
It is. Yeah.
I never felt that way. In no time at all, ever, have I thought of myself as being trapped in the wrong body.
Interesting.
The way I found out what was going on with me was I talked to my sister, and she was the first one that I talked to. And this was back in 2015. How I was feeling and what I was feeling. And it was probably the hardest conversation I've had in my entire life. And um, she looked up while I was staying at her place in New Jersey for a high school reunion. And while I was at the reunion, she was doing some internet searching. And when I came back home, she said, "Here, read this." And what it was the definition of gender dysphoria. And under there were 10 check boxes saying, if you have this and this and this and this and this, there's a good chance you have gender dysphoria. So I'm reading down the list saying, yep, that's me, that's me, that's me, that's not me, that's me, that's me, that's, oh my God, this is a thing. And, and I had checked every single box except the feeling trapped in the wrong body. If I said that was the beginning of the end, I would rather say that was the beginning of the beginning.
Yeah. That's when you found Denise.
That's when I knew that Denise had to come to the surface.
Okay. So that's the hardest conversation you had, which is pretty wild because that was a conversation with yourself, right? Like,
No, that was with my sister.
well, I know, but why was it so hard because it was with your sister, or was it so hard because it was time for you to be honest with yourself?
Probably both of the above.
I would have thought telling your wife might have been the most difficult conversation. And so it's not for me to say. Obviously, it's yours to say, but that is interesting to me.
Okay, but that conversation happened 2 weeks later
Okay.
when she was working one Saturday afternoon, and when she came home, she walked in and she looked at me and said, "What happened to you? Who kicked the dog?" Because my eyes were all red and I was just basically a disheveled mess. And I told her it wasn't anything that you know I wasn't scared to do it. It was just a matter of fact type of thing.
Yeah.
I just had to tell her. Not that I was nervous or scared. I was more scared about the words that I was going to use to try to salvage the marriage. I mean, we'd been married for 30 years, and
Had that
I
marriage been mostly happy? Were you
oh
happy
yeah,
together at this
oh
point
yeah,
when you came out to her?
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah, yeah. We did everything together. I say that. Okay, I am assuming.
You were happy in the marriage. You
I was absolutely happy in the marriage, and I think she was too. We were 50 something, looking at retirement in 10 years, and living in a house in suburbia, and our kids are grown and out of the house and successful, and all of a sudden I throw this wrench at her.
Yeah,
So
it's a wrench. And so how did she take it?
surprisingly well. After a while, she came to the conclusion that, yeah, this is right. You don't have a choice in this matter. I could go on for hours and hours, and I have gone on for hours and hours telling the story to people. But after a while, it came to the point where you're absolutely right. You don't have a choice in this matter. You have to become Denise.
Good for her.
And I started that process. A year later, we were divorced totally amicably. She got a lawyer. I didn't. I basically gave her everything and walked
So
away.
so
But we're
Denise,
still friends. So it's good.
that's good. That's very good. Did you get divorced because it wasn't what she'd signed up for? Did you get divorced because she just didn't know how to handle it, or she didn't want to be married to a woman, or
You hit 2 out of 3 right on the nose. She didn't want to be married to a woman, and
okay.
it's not what she signed up for.
Yeah.
She could have handled it, but because of the other two, it wasn't something that she wanted to handle.
All
Does
right. But we
that make
make
sense?
choices. Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It does
Yeah.
make sense. How about your kids and your parents and your siblings? So your sister already knew a quick overview of kind of what did folks say?
Okay, so my son actually he works in Chicago as well on occasion. So he was in the city one day and I said, "We got to do lunch." So we went and had lunch at some dark restaurant somewhere, and basically I told him and if you knew the restaurant, I don't even want to mention it, but it's somewhere in the Loop and it's a really dark restaurant. It's kind of funny. Anyway, so I come out to him, and in 30 seconds the conversation had switched to, how about them bears? Remember, these guys, my kids were, they're in their mid 20s.
Right.
um this They probably know other transgender people, and it's just a matter of fact for them coming out of college and grad school or whatever, that they know other people, and it's like, it's okay, you're still dad. So now,
Wait, so what do your kids call you? Because I assume that dad doesn't fly anymore.
no, dad does fly, because that's what
Does
I
he?
am. It took a while to come into this realization, like 10 seconds, that I still wanted them to call me dad, even in public. Now,
Wow.
their significant others, I have asked them to call me Denise,
Okay.
and they're a-okay with that. In fact, my son's about to get married in this coming summer, and I've met all the in-laws and everything, and they're just awesome people. So everybody's good.
Oh, Denise, I find that so fascinating. Um,
Yeah,
that that's the one area you're still dad and you wanted to be dad.
yeah,
Can you talk about that
yeah,
for a second? Because that really
sure.
interests me.
Sure. So they still call mom for how to get the stain out of the shirt. Okay.
That's so gendered.
I hate to say it, but I laugh when I say that, because they do call for that question. but they'll call me for typically things that I have done in the past. Hey, I've got this plumbing issue, or whatever. So
But why does that make you dead?
they know
Because
what
my
I'm.
girlfriend could fix a plumbing issue.
Okay. So I am a parent. Okay.
Yes.
And I am not their mother. I am not going to pretend I'm their mother. I'm not going to pretend that I have any motherly rights to them.
Fair enough.
That's an agreement that my ex and I have, is that, and it wasn't even an agreement. I just I don't want to be their mother.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
know, they still need a dad at times for whatever reason. They know they can call me.
Well,
So
sometime over cocktails or coffee, I want to play in this conversation with you more. We don't have hours today because I really want to challenge the idea. So I'll just put this out there for listeners to hear that traditional role, the things that they need you for, that you have that skill set, that doesn't need to be gendered. But we will move on because we only have so much time in this episode. But I honor that.
but
Thank you.
okay, now, by the way, I am not the only person that feels this way. I have another friend who has the exact same relationship. And when she talks about her dad, she uses dad and female pronouns in the same sentence, and she's really good at it. And the more and more she talked about her dad and female pronouns, I said, that's what I want for my
Okay.
kids. So
Okay. And
it
obviously
just
it's your
works.
right. And I would not know anything about it. And I would never assume to know how you feel. So I totally respect that. But it is interesting. So thank you so much for
It's you're welcome. And everybody's different. Everybody has their own thing.
sure.
Okay,
Your
my
parents.
daughter. Okay,
Oh, your
wait, my
daughter.
daughter.
We skipped you. Sorry, we got so into dad. Yes.
Right.
What did your daughter say? And then your parents, and then we'll move on.
So here was a mistake that I made. I never told my daughter. My ex did.
Oh yeah.
She's the only one I never told, and she's the only one that I still have questions as to what her comfort level is with all of this. I've even asked, the first sentence when you come out to somebody is usually the honest one. And because I
Yeah.
never got that first sentence without some hemming and hawing over it, I don't know.
That's
So
interesting.
that's one of the regrets that I have, that I didn't tell her.
I think that's incredibly powerful. Takeaway for anybody, honestly, in any situation, there is tremendous power in driving the bus, right? And being the one that asks the questions and that has the conversations, and not letting somebody else write the story for you.
Right. Now I knew this was going to happen. I knew that my ex was actually going to tell her, and because just she wasn't living at home, and they were getting together on that one particular weekend, and timing was, it was just a perfect storm that she told her with my permission. So
It
there
wasn't
was no going
devious or
behind the
anything.
back and no deviant. No, it
Yeah.
was just the way it was. So that was okay. Now my parents, on the other hand, they live in Florida, so I flew down to see them, and I'm sitting in their living room, and we're just chatting, and I say, I got something to tell you guys. Uh, Mom, do you remember when I was, 3 or 4, and I asked this question? And she said, kind of puzzledly, Yeah, I do. And I said, well, unfortunately, it's come back to haunt me. And I go through I had a spiel that I would tell people, and I told them the same spiel. And after about an hour, my dad's reaction was, I don't see it, but if you say that's the way it is, okay.
All right. Go, dad.
Oh yeah. So the next 2 or 3 hours, my dad secluded himself in his den and printed out web page after web page after web page of what is gender dysphoria and all this stuff. And he starts reading through them, and I kind of knew what he was doing. And I said, by the way, when you get to this one site, not a fan, you could probably skip it. And most of the sites say the same thing, just regurgitated all over this, it's all the same thing. And he came out about 2 hours later and said, yeah, you're absolutely right. I didn't like that same site. And so we were all on the same page, and they're very cool about it. Or
Okay.
not cool, but they're good with it.
They're
They're absolutely good.
they're being accepting and understanding, and that's kind of all you can ask for.
Correct. Not only that, but they are 88 and 89 years old. I mean, they're getting on in their years, and they don't screw up the pronouns either.
It's really impressive.
They knew me for 50 something years as an other name, and
Yep.
now they only get the name right. Now, don't get me wrong, it took them a long time.
Sure.
I would go down and visit them, and they would introduce me as their daughter. He lives in Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a minute for people to catch up. And you say
Yes.
it took them a long time, but let's let everybody know, really, in the grand scheme of the scale of your life, how long has
Oh,
it been since you came out?
I came out October 17th, 2015.
So yeah, it has not been that long, just a little over 3 years, right? Three and a
Yes,
half
you're
years.
right.
Yeah.
Right. It's coming up to 4.
I love how we went from not that long, 3 years, 3.5 years, round up to 4. The mother in me never rounds up. I'm like, oh, you will be 5 until 5 minutes before you were birth. I cannot round up. I can't do it. They all grow up so fast as it is.
Yes, they do.
So,
Yes, they do.
Denise, you work in a very corporate job.
Yes, I do. I am a vice president for a bank.
That is like as corporate as it gets.
Yes, it is.
What was that coming out process like? And were you scared? Were you ever scared?
I was never scared. After I talked to my sister, I was never scared. The coming out process at work was very interesting. I went through some very high highs and I went through some very low lows between then and now.
Right.
And I was actually I was probably at the lowest point that I have ever been in my entire life. Like very low. I ended up telling my HR contact there what was going on. And he said, okay, so obviously this is between you and me, and we will we will come up with a plan.
Okay.
I get to tell him how we want to proceed. So in February, it came to the point where had to start telling people I've been on hormones for a couple of months,
Mm.
and shall we say things were getting obvious. Um,
Okay.
uh, I probably could have hidden it for another couple of months, but it got to the point where I can't
You didn't
really
want to.
hide this anymore. I
Yeah.
didn't. It's not that I didn't want to. It's just that it was getting harder to, be one person after 5 o'clock and somebody
Yeah.
else. So,
Like all the
um,
time. Yeah.
yeah. So some people call that being out 24/7 minus 40.
I don't mean to laugh because that's not a position anybody wants to be in.
No,
You want
no,
to be you all the time. So,
you're absolutely right. So I asked my HR guy who goes to our chief technology officer's staff meetings, and I'm in the technology area. So ultimately, I report up to him. I've been with the company for about 30 years now. So I've been with these guys a long time, and I know everybody in the CTO's meeting. I'm not in there. So I say, on this date, tell him, make an announcement that on March, whatever, 6th or whatever that Monday was, that Denise will be coming into the office and this is the corporate policies and, here's the bathroom rules and whatnot. And so for 3 or 4 days, I got nothing but congratulations. Oh my God, you're so brave, et cetera, emails, except one.
the one
And
you
that was
were waiting on.
no, no, no. The,
No?
the the one that I got made me laugh. It
Oh,
was from somebody down in Tempe, Arizona, that said, "Hey, yeah, all the congratulations stuff that goes with it. Congratulations, but there's somebody I want to introduce you to. Can I pass along your name?" And I'm like, "Sure, absolutely." And it turned out to be the one other trans person that was out at the bank.
of course.
Now, I knew there was somebody who transitioned, get this, 10 years prior, and nobody had transitioned since, which
Wow.
is statistically totally abnormal.
Yeah,
You
like
know,
people just were afraid. So what about since then? Because
right.
and it's funny, you and I have spoken about this on a number of occasions, and
Mhm.
I will always say, gosh, the bank is so great about blah, blah, blah. And you'll go, yes, it's great, isn't it? They have to.
Yeah.
Legally, they have to, which I always think is a great response. But since you came out, have there been more transgender folks coming out at your company?
Okay. So in June, after I was out full time, this other person, Sandy, and I actually gave a presentation to the bank that said, this is what it is to be transgender. This is what it means. This is all the stuff. This is the pluses and the minuses and whatnot. When it was all done, one young person came up to me when everybody had gone and said, "Thank you for doing this presentation. I'm next in line."
Oh, good for them.
So as it turns out, they sit about 100 feet from me on my floor. So we get together and we do lunch all the
I
time.
love that. They're lucky to have
And
you as a mentor.
I think so. Um,
That's a good segue, though. Do you have mentors? And I'm sure that you have a million mentors in your life. We all do, and business mentors, but in the transgender community, somebody that you really relied on and looked up to?
so there were two. Sandy was at the beginning, it was Sandy.
This is the person you worked with who had come out 10 years before you.
Sandy, right.
Okay.
And she retired like the day after our presentation. So I'm like, what do you mean you're retiring? It was just good timing that I came out in March and she retired in July, like the first week in July. And so I kind of shadowed her for a while. So she was my business mentor, and I followed her around and joined all the same clubs and activities and whatever she was in.
Nice.
On the personal side, now this may sound strange. I had never spoken with nor met any transgender person before I started hormones.
Wow. Never.
Never. So that goes back to the isolation portion of my 3 words. I was alone when I started this whole process.
Yeah.
I had no mentors. My mentor was my therapist, who was she's cisgendered. So she could help me along so much, but she didn't have any first person experience. So once I met Sandy and really we started talking and whatnot, Sandy was actually number 2. And number 1, there's a group that meets at the Center on Halsted in Chicago. And I became involved with that. I actually made their 3rd meeting ever, because I didn't
Oh,
know
wow.
it was there. And so the person that kind of runs that, she's become my mentor, and we didn't agree on a lot of stuff, and I have since found that that's okay. You
Yeah.
don't you don't have to agree with your mentor. Just be prepared that i- things are going to go differently.
Yeah.
So
I think that's such a valuable takeaway because nobody has exactly the same story, perception, perspective as another person, even if there are a number of similarities. So everybody's adventure has been different. The journey changes, and your perception is so much about your reality.
that is correct. You're absolutely right. One of the questions that you ask a lot of people, and I've listened to a lot of your
Well,
podcasts.
maybe
Thank
I'm
you. I
going to
think they're
ask you, are you
wonderful.
blowing one of my questions in advance, Denise? I'm
Yes,
kidding.
here I am. What, what do I do to celebrate my
Oh,
successes?
yeah, that's coming.
Yeah,
I guess we'll just do it now.
we'll just do it now. Okay, so through the transitioning process, there are a lot of successes. There's, first time you take hormones, the first time you whatever. There's 100 different things. The first time you go into a store, think of this: first time you go as a person transitioning, go into a store, try something on,
Oh, I can't imagine.
try on a dress for the first time. Okay.
What was that like? Just tell us.
By the time I went to do that, I had gotten to the point mentally where I just didn't care anymore. And
Good
if
for you.
somebody else, the old motto of nobody cares. No, who cares if
And
I'm
if they do, it's
transitioning?
their problem and not yours.
No, no, no. It's easier than that. Nobody should care if you're transitioning. And if they do care, they're a nobody.
All right. Okay.
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 So that was my mantra well, it still is, that if somebody cares, I don't care if you care. And so basically I took 3 or 4 dresses off the rack and I had to wear it, for this presentation I was doing. Then I just walked in and changed and tried them on and walked out, and nobody said boo. And it was like, that was anticlimactic. And that's what I have found in almost 100% of the cases, that it was just, who cared? Nobody cared.
Yeah. So
So,
might as well tell us then, how do you celebrate these successes?
okay. So I celebrate successes by relating my story to others.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of public speaking on this topic, and I go to, this our trans meeting on at the center, and I tell my stories. The other night we had a meeting, and I talked for an hour and a half on the surgery that I just had. People were like, "Oh my God, nobody's ever talked about this. Thank you." And it made me feel good
Yeah.
to just get it out. It's nothing bottled up inside anymore. I was reminded of an old cartoon the other day where I think it was probably Tom or Jerry or one of those cartoon type things where you crimp a fire hose and then the water comes and it starts to get this big huge bubble behind it, and all of a sudden they let the water go and it's like shooting all over the place. I didn't want to do that again. That's what I'd felt for 50 years, that the water was backed up. And now it's just a constant stream. And I feel so much better for it just by talking about it a lot.
Yeah.
Even talking to you today for me, it's therapeutic.
I think so. For me, the same. When I share my story, a little bit. I used to say when I was coming out, and as you know, you never really stop coming out. You're coming out all the time. Um, but when I would first do it, I would like start to sweat, and my heart would race, and I finally described it. Every time I would do it, I became a little bit more whole, and now
Yeah.
it just comes out. That doesn't mean that I'm not sometimes cautious. I have to know my audience. I want to be safe, and I'm
Yeah.
not
Oh, yeah,
stupid,
absolutely.
but I'm not afraid of anything. I'm not afraid of what somebody's reaction is going to be because I don't care. I mean,
Right.
if I care about you, I cared at one point what your reaction would be, but they all know, so it doesn't matter. You said something interesting where you were talking about the surgery that you just had, and Bernadette and I came to visit you in the hospital, which was really something I was delighted to be able to do. It was so nice to see you as you were
Well, thank you for
recovering.
coming.
Yeah, you're welcome. But we had a conversation so where I'm going with this is, do you feel brave? And before you answer that question, we'd ask you if you were nervous going in for surgery. Do you remember your response?
My response was probably no, I wasn't nervous.
Yeah. You told us you weren't nervous, and that
No.
shocked Bernadette. It didn't particularly shock me. I don't know why, but why weren't you nervous?
I get this question a lot. So if we have a couple of minutes, let me back up a bit. So as I was coming out that, hey, I'm about to have, and let's face it, it was the surgery. Okay. I had gender reassignment surgery. And and I would tell select people that I was having this surgery. 100% of the time, every single person I told this to asked the question, are you nervous? Are you scared? There was always some are you and then some, and I would say negative emotion. Are you whatever. Are you excited every once in a while? And my answer was always I am none of the above. This is just the next step in the process.
Right.
And that's the way that I had mentally put it in my mind. There's a lot of back and forth with the surgeon's offices. So I would get a call from the doctor's office about every other week, and it started to get closer and closer. And and every time the phone would ring, my heart would stop. And I'm thinking, they're going to cancel this. They're going to reschedule it. It's off. There's some paperwork missing. There's 1,000 things that could go wrong. And this goes on and on and on. And on the day before reassignment surgery, I got a call from the hospital. And the hospital, they go over saying, okay, we want you here at 5 o'clock in the morning. And
To which you walked, by the way, to that surgery.
yes,
You
I
walked
did
from
walk.
home to the hospital.
I
Yeah.
walked from home to the hospital. But I hung up the phone with them, and every single emotion I have ever experienced in my entire life just drained out of my system. Tears. I was inconsolable. Thank God I was home alone actually at the time. It would have been an ugly scene if somebody had seen me. And what I realized was at that point, it was disbelief that this is finally
Finally happening.
over.
Yeah.
I don't want to call it a nightmare, but everything that I've always had an issue with was finally over.
So what you said to me that night was, no, I was not nervous nor excited, but it was simply putting things the way they have always been, making them match the way things have always been. And I loved that. I got it, I understood it, and doing the thing that is right for you is just what is the word? It's powerful. It's not, it is brave. I do think it's brave, but it's not about that. It doesn't come with any of these big emotions because it is just required.
Correct. That's it. And that is so hard to convey to people that they, I don't want to say they don't get it, but they don't get it.
Yeah.
It's just, it's just the final, in my case, hopefully it's the last surgery.
Yeah.
I've had some doozies in the last couple of years, but hopefully it's the last one for a while.
So, Denise, you were telling us about your work in the community and speaking. I'm curious, and I've never asked you this. Were you involved in any way in the LGBTQ community prior to coming out?
So not only was I not involved, I avoided it like the plague because I had a feeling that if I got involved, it would be such a slippery slope and it would have sent me, I'm going to say, down this rabbit hole years early. I avoided it. And I actually have some great friends in the community, and they would every once in a while say, "Hey, let's go out," and I'd say, I'm busy" or whatever.
Did you ever question? So, for those listening, I think most of you are pretty up on everything, but there's a difference in your sexual identity versus your gender identity. Did you ever wonder if you weren't straight? And now you're not straight, right? I don't mean to assume for you what your sexual identity is, but
So the way I tell the story is when I jump in with both feet, one on the L, one on the T.
Okay, so you are a lesbian.
Yes.
But did you ever think maybe you were gay prior to transitioning?
No.
Okay.
Well, again, see, that's such an impossible question to answer. It's all hypothetical. I can tell you that I have absolutely no interest in a romantic of any way, shape, or form relationship with a guy.
Me either.
Yeah, we gotta talk.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. It's something that I've often wondered about. We were reading last night about Jennifer Pritzker, who is a very famous trans woman here in Chicago,
Yes.
Who was talking about being a pretty fierce Republican, which is not something that I can understand in any capacity. Did your political affiliation change when you transitioned?
Can I claim the fifth? Yes.
It did, and now you're not so proud of it.
Yeah, pretty much. You know what, though? Admittedly, there was no way that I would support anything that's going on today in a certain party. So,
right.
regardless of my transition here.
Okay. Well, that makes me feel relief that we can now solidly stay friends, Denise. That's
okay.
good.
Okay. Now we can do wine.
Absolutely. So, okay. So we've already talked about celebrating success. This is the point in the show where I normally ask that question, but you beat me to the punch, which is totally fine. No, don't be sorry. It's absolutely great. I love that you listen and enjoy the show. So thank you for that.
I do.
If you could give one piece of advice to someone out there struggling with gender dysphoria, what would you say? What would that piece of advice be?
It actually, can I give multiple pieces of advice? You are not alone. Okay. No matter how you feel and no matter what you feel about yourself, whether it be your body dysphoria or social dysphoria or just mental dysphoria, just nothing is fitting, you are not alone. There are millions of us and everybody experiences it differently. So in my case, I never was sad that I was a guy. I never was sad about that. Granted, there was a lot of privilege there, but I never was. Now that I'm not, I'm euphoric. So I've gone from not mad to euphoric. So that's a good thing.
That's pretty lovely. So then let me ask it in a different not in a different way, what one piece of advice would you give to somebody who has a friend or a loved one who is transitioning? What's the one takeaway you want them to have?
Be their voice when they're not around.
Okay, tell us what you mean by that.
So what I mean by that is, let's say you're at a coffee shop, assuming you're an ally, and somebody's talking about me, okay, and they say, "Yeah, I listened to that podcast, and he was really good."
Oh,
And
nope.
and you and your response should be, "Yes, she was."
Yeah.
Don't don't call somebody out if you're in a multi conversational situation. Calling attention to it, if the transitionee is still there, is now twice that you've been misgendered, and
Yeah.
probably three times, and probably four times. So the right way that I feel to handle that situation, and again everybody's different, would be just to repeat what they said with the correct pronouns, and just make it obvious. and
Yep.
and and people usually say, to themselves, "Oh crap."
I actually had an experience with that last week. I have a friend, a fellow board member, um, who has a child who is, I don't fully know if they are transgender or just non-binary. I'm not sure they've fully identified that either, but they do go by they them there. And the child was born female, and mom is great, super supportive, really wonderful about it, quick to tell you that she has a transgender child, but kept referring to her child as a she. And I kept responding back with, "Oh, they are? Oh, is that what they're doing?" And finally she looked at me and she goes, "Oh my God, I got the pronouns wrong. Like, I'm so tired. It's been such a long day. I can't believe I did that." And I said, it's a process. It's a process for everybody. So thank you for that.
Even I am not infallible. I actually left a voicemail for my niece right before Christmas for some reason, and I had never put the words Aunt Denise
Mm.
with me. So when I started the meeting, I said, "Hi, this is Uncle blah blah blah," and the person that was sitting next to me looked at me and said, "What?" I was like, I wonder if I can delete this."
That's funny. Well, good
Because
good
I had
opportunity to
I
have
never,
a conversation with your niece.
well, actually, I deleted it, but
Okay, well, that's good. And if she's listening, your niece, this is your
oh
Aunt
no, I told her.
Denise.
I told
Okay,
her.
all right,
I
good
told
to
her. It
know.
was just kind of funny.
Denise, I love that you're such an advocate in the community. If there's anybody who's listening who wants to learn more or connect with you, or they're maybe in the process of transitioning or thinking of transitioning, or have a loved one who's doing that, um, can they reach out to you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We'll put it in the show notes, but the email address is Denise219477 @gmail.com.
Awesome. We'll put that in the show notes. So if anybody wants to reach out, thank you for being available to people for that.
Oh, sure.
So now I get to ask you the last question that I ask in every episode, but one that I think is so powerful and so important. What is your favorite charitable organization to support?
So the one that I support mostly is a group called Anchor House, and they are located in Trenton, New Jersey, which is right down the street from where I grew up. And every year I participate in a 500-mile bike ride through the Appalachian Mountains to raise
Wow.
money for runaway kids. And if you look at the runaway kid population, they're not usually runaway, they're usually throwaway. It's
Hmm.
parents who kids come out to, and dad opens the door and says, "Hit the road, Jack," close the door, locks it behind him. A lot of the people that come through this organization are LGBT of some nature, and they just need our support. And I feel very strongly about this. So I've ridden with these guys. This will be hopefully my sixth year. I hope that I can heal up in time to do the 2,000 miles worth of
When is
training
the
that I need to
race?
do. It's not really a race, it's just a ride.
Just a ride. Okay.
It's right after the 4th of July.
All right.
So this year we're heading from just outside of Rochester, New York, and heading into Pennsylvania and across Pennsylvania to Trenton, New Jersey.
Well, if you will be doing fundraising, which I have
I
a
will.
feeling you may be, we'll put that link on the show notes
Oh,
because
that'll be perfect.
this is just
Timing would be good.
just a few weeks away. So we'll put it out there, and folks can support this, which, this is what I ask you guys, the listeners, to do. You all, I've been working on that My girlfriend called me out on that. I say you guys all the time. As a collective for humans, I'm not trying to gender any of you, but I am trying to change it, working to be conscious. So for all of you listeners, go out and learn more about this organization. If you have a few dollars to support Denise in this ride, then do that, or share the link, or give it to somebody who might need that support. This is what makes our world and our community stronger and better. Denise, will you share your 3 words with us one last time?
Absolutely. Isolation, clarity, disbelief.
So I just want to talk for 1 second about disbelief. At what point, or still, do you still experience constant disbelief, or how does disbelief play in?
That disbelief occurred the evening before I had gender reconstructive surgery.
Okay.
And it was my entire life just washed out of me in a matter of 10 minutes. And it was such a powerful emotion that
It's beautiful.
it's just, I'm just in disbelief that I actually did this. 50 years of sitting there thinking, I'm never going to do it. I'm always going to be stuck. I am never going to be, the
I'm so
woman that I want
happy
to
for
be.
you. Denise, your story, it inspires me. And I think it's just so very important for people to hear so that they can gain a deeper understanding of what the transgender community is experiencing, how they can be supportive, powerful for anyone who may be experiencing gender dysphoria of any kind. I'm so very grateful that you decided to come on and chat with me today and share your story. Thank you so much.
Thank you for letting me tell it.
So speaking of grateful, have you all listeners, have you grabbed your copy of my gratitude journal yet? It's really good. I know I wrote it and I'm supposed to think that, but I promise it is. It's a wonderful tool in developing a powerful gratitude practice that can have a lasting positive impact on your life. Denise, do you have a gratitude practice?
I do not.
Okay, so we'll get you a copy of the journal.
Please do.
And we'll talk about it over liquor sometime.
Okay.
Or a cup of coffee, or I don't ride a bike, so we can't talk about it over a bike ride, but
Maybe an ice skates.
maybe on ice skates. Oh, that's right. Denise went ice skating with me and my daughters, and you're so very good. And you taught them a little bit. That was pretty fun. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So you guys grab the copy of the gratitude journal, because building this gratitude practice, it has life-changing effects. It's so powerful, and your perception really does create your reality. So what do you want to think about? You want to think about the things you're grateful for or the things you're not grateful for? I'll leave you with that food for thought. Thank you for being here, for sharing this time with us. This is Heather Vickery, and I'm reminding you, as always, each and every day, to choose bravely.
The Brave Files is proudly supported by Audible. If you enjoy listening to podcasts, you're sure to love listening to your favorite books on Audible. Get your free 30-day trial, complete with a credit, for a free audiobook download today, simply by visiting audibletrial.com/thebravefiles. Again, that's visiting audibletrial.com/thebravefiles. The Brave Files is proudly supported by Lost Format Apparel, a socially conscious clothing company. You already know that homelessness is a huge problem. Over 500,000 Americans are living without shelter, and millions more without consistent access to everyday basics. My friends at Lost Format know that solving homelessness is a much larger problem than any one company or person can solve on their own. It requires teamwork, sacrifice, strength, and building communities through personal and professional relationships. And isn't that exactly what the Brave Files podcast is all about? That's why I'm proud to say that the Brave Files has partnered with Lost Format, and together we're working to change the face of consumerism in addressing homelessness. You can now get one of 2 fantastic shirts custom designed specifically for the Brave Files. Each order goes towards providing necessities to the homeless. We have one shirt that, of course, says "Choose Bravely," and another that reminds you that brave is always greater than fearless. Head on over to vickeryandco.com/store to see both beautiful shirts and to check out the entire product line from Lost Format. All of their stuff is super soft and comfortable and has an amazing fit. Use promo code BRAVE to get 10% off of your Brave Files custom t-shirts. And if you have an order over $30, your shipping is free. I choose bravely to take the plunge to help solve homelessness. Are you with me?
Thank you for listening to The Brave Files. Be sure to visit thebravefilespodcast.com to access the show notes and discover fantastic bonus content. Music composed and produced by Matt Lewis of Union Music, LLC.
Special thanks to our editor and audio mix expert, Andrew Olson. I am eternally grateful for all that he does to make each week sound so fantastic. You can hear more of Andrew's work at findandrewolson.com.